I'm Jenni Carlson.
I'm Barry Tramel. Welcome to the Jenni and Berry Show.
Hey, grab your snacks, gather your friends. The Super Bowl is almost here. Kansas City versus San Francisco. Two storied franchises, two great teams, and yes, two former Big 12 quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy. Barry and I are here to talk about the pride of Lubbock and Ames and what to expect out of them Sunday in Las Vegas. But first, we want to say a quick word of thanks to these sponsors for supporting the Jenni and Berry Show. The Oklahoma Ford Dealers Association, MidFirst Bank, Next Gen Roofing, Two Fellas Movers, the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum, 988, Oklahoma's Mental Health Lifeline. Drive into your best in Oklahoma Ford dealers today for the best deals on Ford's full lineup of trucks and SUVs. Ford is the best in Oklahoma. And let's face it, a box of pizza and a case of beer just don't work like they used to. Nobody wants to help you move. We know two fellas who love moving. At Two Fellas Moving Company, we offer free, no-strings quotes for your move. With more than 20 years experience, we've pretty much moved it all. Our services don't end up moving either. Need to do some remodeling or spring cleaning? We've got you covered with dumpster rentals and junk haul services. Remember, quotes are free and there are no strings attached. If you're moving in Oklahoma, make sure to call the fellas. Visit twofellas.com for your free quote today. All right, Barry, say it with me. Big 12, Big 12, Big 12.
No, it doesn't. You can't chant it as well as SEC.
I know. I actually tried to come up with the equivalent, like Big 12 rules or Big 12 whatever. I don't know.
Big
but
1-2. Big 1-2.
There you go. But hey, I think it's safe to say somewhere in Las Colinas, maybe not so deep in the dark Big 12 headquarter recesses, Brett Yormark's probably doing some sort of happy dance. I mean, both Big 12 quarterbacks, Barry, and teams that have been part of this league for a long time. These guys were deep in the thick of it for several years. This is a big deal for the Big 12.
I think it's great. It harkens back to those glorious years when the Big 12 had unbelievable quarterbacks. You know, we're going back 15 years now to the Sam Bradford, Colt McCoy era, and guy might be the fifth best quarterback in the Big 12 and get picked 14th in the draft or something overall. So Big 12 quarterbacking has fallen off some in recent years, but Patrick Mahomes was a notable exception, and Brock Purdy has been a surprise celebrant in the NFL, doing wonders with the 49ers. So, yeah, the Big 12 flag flies pretty high when you come to Super Bowl 58.
Well, let's talk about these two guys. Let's start with Mahomes. He's obviously emerged as the premier quarterback in the NFL. At 28, he's already got 2 Super Bowls to his credit. Could get a third on Sunday. I know everybody's got Tom Brady at the tip top of the quarterback rankings all time, but Mahomes at this age with that resume, when does he start to enter into the best ever conversation with Tom Brady and his 7 rings?
Well, I think Mahomes will have a couple of years before you can enter him into that holy of holies, but clearly he's on a path for NFL immortality. This is a guy that's not just a difference-making quarterback, but a sensational watch. You know, you can't take your eyes off of him with his theatrics, with his tricks, with doing stuff, you know, the underhand pitches, the no-look passes. I mean, he plays quarterback like Ernie D. Gregorio played point guard. So everybody's fascinated by Patrick Mahomes. He's sort of interesting in that he's probably the NFL's number 1 fascination, even though he's number 2 on his own team, thanks to the Swifties. But he's a treasure. We got to see it a little bit in Lubbock, and it certainly has paid off with Kansas City.
Yeah, you know, the thing about Tom Brady that's interesting, I mean, 2 things come to mind when you think about Brady beyond the success and on all the Super Bowls. You know, he went a pretty long time between some Super Bowl wins. I think maybe even a decade of break in there for Brady. And the way that Mahomes is going right now, you know, it's crazy it's not easy to win Super Bowls. Obviously, it doesn't just happen. But the way that things have been working in Kansas City, the just the positive momentum of things, it's hard to think about Patrick Mahomes going that long between championships. It doesn't feel like he's going to have that kind of drought. The other thing, of course, is how long Brady played, well into his 40s. Mahomes, they had media day on Monday in Las Vegas, and I saw a headline just this morning, Tuesday, that Mahomes says he wants to play into his 40s. Now, you have no idea if that's going to happen. He's still got a 28-year-old body. If injuries happen, if other things happen, he may feel different in another 4 or 5 years, but you got to play a long time to win 7 Super Bowls. That's part of Tom Brady's greatness. But Barry, again, we don't know the injury answer, but I could see Mahomes playing until he was 40. That doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility. I know he's had some injuries, but he's been fairly healthy. He keeps himself fairly healthy, out of harm's way. Is that crazy to think we could have another guy play quarterback into his 40s in Mahomes?
No, and you're seeing guys, more and more guys attempt it. Not everybody, not the majority, a big minority. However, more than one. I mean, Drew Brees went into his 40. Aaron Rodgers is attempting to go into his 40s. And Warren Moon in a different era did. What we're seeing is the NFL has done all it can to protect quarterbacks. It's the rules, the officiating interpretations, just the general culture of the league is protect these guys at all times. They're the guys that bring the weight when it comes to the big TV contracts with the superstars. That's what makes the NFL go, or these high profile quarterbacks. NFL is not going to kill the golden goose. Yeah. So it's set up for guys to play longer with the way the sport has evolved. And a guy like Mahomes, let's say he's 28, so he's born in the mid-90s. I mean, he really doesn't know life without taking care of himself. When I was a kid, we had quarterbacks that, nutrition, conditioning,
smoking on the sidelines.
Yeah, we literally, I've lived long enough. I've known NFL quarterbacks who smoked. So, I mean, we think of that today and we think, this is what? But Patrick Mahomes will take care of himself. He's in a great environment in Kansas City. No reason to think that'll change. No. So, yeah, he could, I don't know if he'll go to 40, but he could have a very long and prosperous career that could indeed challenge Tom Brady.
You know who doesn't like to hear this conversation? Anybody in Cincinnati or Buffalo, because they've got some really good quarterbacks too. It's tough sledding in that conference, Barry. I don't have any idea. You think about what could have been for Buffalo if not for Kansas City standing in their way. Josh Allen's fantastic. Obviously, we saw the Bengals and Joe Burrow get to a Super Bowl, but we know how tough that is. I mean, you've got 3 of the best young quarterbacks in the game, all button heads there. And you mentioned Mahomes and what he's done in Kansas City. As good as they've been, I think they've got the best defense that they've had so far this year of all the teams he's been a part of. And I know it's not all him, but Barry, he's reworked his contract, give them more cap space. Don't worry. He's still getting paid. He's still getting plenty of cash coming in, but he's done some things to give them some flexibility. And I think it's paid off. That defense, that's a good defense, Barry.
Well, Kansas City's just an exemplary franchise. You're right. Kansas City, the Chiefs are more of a defensive team than anything else. Yeah. I mean, they really, they score 17 points in the AFC Championship game. So, with all the Patrick Mahomes stuff, with all the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift stuff, we sometimes take even Andy Reid has become, sort of a star in his own way. He's a guy that's risen up to the top 5 of all-time NFL coaching victories. And we sometimes forget that. Here's an example. When people talk about who they're picking Sunday, most people say, I'm not picking against Mahomes. Even though really what's really produced most of this season is Steve Spagnuolo's defense.
That's right.
So you're right. And let me tell you, a quarterback's best friend is that good defense. if Patrick Mahomes had to score 27 points to reach Super Bowl 58, he might not be in Las Vegas. And he didn't have to do that. He just had to score 17. So, the Chiefs are a load in part because of Patrick Mahomes and in part because of that defense.
Yeah, a lot of the things you just said about Kansas City, you could also say about San Francisco, because San Francisco's got a great defense. It's a well-run franchise. But obviously, Brock Purdy, his journey to this point, to this Super Bowl, way more unlikely than Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if we saw Patrick Mahomes becoming the great quarterback that he is. I mean, this is a transcendent type of talent. So as good as he was in college, I'm not sure if you could have foreseen that good, but Purdy's Mr. Irrelevant in the draft. He's the last guy taken in the draft. That's not at a position that you're not expected to go and become the guy leading your team to the Super Bowl. I know people talk about, system quarterbacks and whatever you want to say, game managers, and want to say that's a bad thing, but Brock Purdy makes plays when he needs to, and San Francisco is a darn good team, Barry. And the same what you said before about Mahomes being a big part of that, Brock Purdy is a big part of that for the Niners.
I love the Brock Purdy story. Of course, anybody that knows me well knows I like Iowa State. I pull for the Cyclones. I think they're a great story. I think Brock Purdy was a great story at Iowa State. But he was not Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, when we saw Mahomes at Texas Tech, we knew we were watching something special. We never really thought that when we watched the Cyclones with Brock Purdy. We thought, hey, Iowa State's got him a good quarterback. That's fantastic. He's going to stay 4 years. That's great. But we didn't see the Super Bowl in the near future. But he's a fundamentally sound quarterback. He delivers the ball where it needs to be. He doesn't try to play outside of himself. He doesn't make major mistakes. And he's on a really good team. Some people say he's a game manager. Maybe he is, but guess what the 49ers need? They need a game manager. So they didn't make the Super Bowl last year, and the year before that. I mean, it's not odd just because you make the Super Bowl with a great team should not penalize you. And for a guy like Brock Purdy to come in and play as well as he has, I'm pulling for him. I think he's a good story, but he's not the same kind of quarterback as Patrick Mahomes, and guess what? Nobody else is either.
Yeah. But I will say this for Brock Purdy, Barry. He may have single-handedly changed the trajectory of the Niners. I mean, this is a Niners team that was in the Super Bowl in the last few years with that defense at the helm, but then they really kind of, with Jimmy Garoppolo, and it felt like they were sort of wandering in the quarterback wilderness a little bit, trying to figure out what to do. And, to have this guy that they drafted basically as kind of just a safety pick. Let's have a backup. I mean, I'm sure they're thinking this guy seems like a good locker room guy. He hasn't had, a bunch of missteps. He's a guy we can bring in, we can teach in case we need him. We've seen obviously teams that need third and maybe fourth string quarterbacks. So having a guy like that, on your roster, maybe you put him on the practice squad, having him around is not a bad thing, but the way he's evolved, and now they've got this guy who is still on a, bargain basement rookie contract, but playing like he is and allowing them to surround him with, these other great players that they can pay a little bit higher salary. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy at some point, obviously, but it's changed everything, Barry. I mean, I assume that if he wouldn't have become what he's become, they'd have gone out and figured out something else. But who knows if that works? It just feels like it's just one more thing that you go, man, I did not see that coming, because everything about this guy being to this level, to me, is a surprise. I mean, I really thought he was more in the Chase Daniel mold of a guy that will be on a roster for a long time, but not really have to play. That was what I thought Brock Purdy would be.
Yeah, I never thought of him as an NFL quarterback. Guys make the NFL. Our old pal Nate Hibble played a couple of years. Landry Jones, 4 or 5 years as a Steeler backup. We've seen guys like that forever. You mentioned Chase Daniel, who had a long career as an NFL backup quarterback, but nobody could really say, hey, this guy's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, much less a Super Bowl quarterback. But I think it's a great story because sometimes we penalize guys in our minds because of what college they play for. And a quarterback from Iowa State can't possibly be better than a quarterback from Oklahoma. A quarterback from I don't know, TCU can't possibly be better than a quarterback from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
But Josh Allen came from Wyoming. So there are others throughout the league that guys that from outposts, if you will, of college football. So I like the Brock Purdy story. I'll be pulling for him. He actually had more success in college than did Patrick Mahomes. Now, Mahomes, I think, was 12-13 as a starter at Tech. If it's not 12-13, I think it was 13-12. I looked it up today. He's 0-5 against OU and OSU. Never beat an Oklahoma team. And Brock Purdy was 3-5 against the Sooners and Cowboys. I think you were at the game where his breakout.
Yeah.
Where we didn't even know he was going to start, but he starts and they score 40-something points and beat a really good OSU team in 2018.
Yeah.
So he's a great story. 4-year guy. Don't see many of that anymore. Just a rock solid legacy guy now in Ames, Iowa. So I'll be pulling for Brock Purdy going forward in his NFL career.
You mentioned that Purdy game in Stillwater. You, I believe, were at the Mahomes-Mayfield game in Lubbock, were you not?
Yeah, that 59-56 game, yeah.
I agree that I felt like Mahomes had a good chance to be a really good quarterback. Again, I'll go back and say that I don't know if I thought he was going to start, being mentioned in the same sentence with Tom Brady so early in his career. But, as we talk about these guys and what they've become, is this an indictment on Cliff Kingsbury and Matt Campbell? Because, what you said about Mahomes' record, obviously, I don't know if Purdy, he had his struggles, but they had some good offenses. They had all those tight ends. They had David Montgomery in the backfield. They had some weapons, Barry, and as good. Iowa State played at a Big 12 championship game at one point, but is this a little bit of an indictment on Tech and Iowa State that they had these two guys and we didn't see more out of those programs?
Indictment of Kingsbury, yes. Indictment of Matt Campbell, no.
Just because you like Matt Campbell, come on.
I do like Matt Campbell. I do like Iowa State. But, those two programs are not the same, right? Iowa State, it's easy now to remember them as, this team that can't quite get over the hump in Big 12. They made a Big 12 championship game. But they really haven't won a big game type situation. Can't beat Iowa. Iowa State was the dregs of the Big 12 for many years. The dregs of college football, and just 4-7, 4-8, 4-7. That's the history of Iowa State football. Matt Campbell has turned them into a consistent winner, and much of that was those 4 years with Brock Purdy, 18 through 21. So 17 was the first year, was the Iowa State's breakout season. So Brock Purdy was there near the start of this and really propelled that program. And I think Matt Campbell helped Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy helped Matt Campbell. Texas Tech, on the other hand, has a pretty solid. Now, it's not a juggernaut. They didn't go to the Cotton Bowl every third year in the Southwest Conference, but it was a good, solid football program. And it was a good, solid offensive machine and quarterback factory in the entire 21st century. And Patrick Mahomes is a transcendent talent. And Tech didn't do much on the field with Patrick Mahomes those 2 years he was the quarterback. I think that is an indictment of Kingsbury. Maybe not his offensive skill, clearly strong. Offensive culture at Tech was great. 59-56 game is Exhibit A. But they didn't build any kind of defensive culture around it. Didn't get much done. So I would ask Cliff Kingsbury what gives. I would tell Matt Campbell, good job.
Well, you could say some of the same things about Cliff Kingsbury that you could say some of the same things about Lincoln Riley with the caliber quarterbacks they had. And I know it was more winning with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, but to not win a playoff game with any of those three quarterbacks, it was the defense. And I think you referenced the crazy game that the two teams played, so many yards, so many points, just all offense. It was really, I have to think that had they had any semblance of defense out in Lubbock when Mahomes is there, it wouldn't have been too far-fetched to see him play for a Big 12 championship, at least make a push for that. And frankly, I don't really remember that being the case at all. I remember Mahomes was a big deal, but there was never a point where I thought, Tech's going to be in the running for this thing. That was never even a conversation. To me, that's as much, not necessarily that they didn't get there. Yes, that's an indictment. But not even being in the conversation, Barry, that's an indictment on Cliff Kingsbury.
It is an indictment. The one thing I will say about those days is I think Big 12 coaches, players, even us media, I think we recognize Patrick Mahomes' specialness more so than even the NFL drafts. Kansas City trades up and gets Patrick Mahomes at number 10.
Right.
Second quarterback taken in the draft. Mitch Trubisky went number 2 overall to the Bears. I didn't watch a lot of North Carolina football. I assumed Mitchell Trubisky was a really good player, and I'm sure he was, and maybe still is. And not a lot going on there in recent years. But
he ain't Pat Mahomes.
How could you reach the point where you think I'm going to take that guy and not that guy? That's what I want to know from scouts. What are you seeing that the rest of us can't see? Because when you saw Patrick Mahomes, you saw magic. Listen. Everybody in Oklahoma loved Baker Mayfield. Everybody thought Mayfield was a great player. He was a great player. He's unbelievable. But when they were on the field together, you sort of realized that even Mahomes was a cut above even Mayfield, just because of the things he could produce. And it's what you see when the Chiefs play, all the stuff. So, scouts, when scouts get tunnel visioned, that's a perfect example. Kansas City didn't. Kansas City said, what? This guy's going to fall? We can trade for him at 10?
Let's go.
That's the difference between a franchise that embarks on a great era and a franchise that's trying to get to a great era.
Yeah, so many big moments by those guys from their college days. Even bigger moments coming on Sunday with the Super Bowl. So we're going to have a live stream on Sunday. Be sure to join us. We're going to have some fun during the game. You're going to want to check that out on all the platforms. So come find us there. That's all the time we've got this week for the Jenni and Berry Show. We've got all sorts of Super Bowl content at Sellout Crowd. And you can find our columns, videos, and podcasts there, as well as BarryTramel.com and Jenni-Carlson.com. And if you want our content sent straight to your inbox, and who wouldn't, sign up for our newsletters. Free, it's easy. Just head to selloutcrowd.com and opt in. If this happens to be your first time hearing or watching us, be sure to subscribe to our show on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. And if you like what you hear, please leave us a review. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.